Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, Dying Time is here. That's right, we're talking the Omen 2, or Damien the Omen 2, or Damien Thorn the Omen 2, the Omening again, on Kill by Kill. Well, greetings and salutations, Internet. It's your old pal, Patrick Henry, coming to you once again from some sort of military cadet academy that does almost nothing in this movie. It's the Kill by Kill podcast. Welcome once again. This time we will be discussing Damien the Omen 2 in the hopes that a member of the Thorn Corporation's death is just the beginning of the jokes that we can make at their expense. And as always, there's only one person I trust that if my visage is on the wall of Ithiel, she'll tell everybody about it. The one, the only, Gina Radcliffe. How are you doing today, Gina?
I'm good. I've got my daggers ready. My 7 daggers of Megiddo or some biblical bullshit that they throw at us in this movie.
Yeah. And they get there super fast. It's almost like they were mailed by the U.S. Postal Service right now. Oh, man. This movie only had 2 directors, and yet it feels like it had 4 or 5, Gina.
It sure does. A movie that has some really good kills and absolutely nothing else to say about it.
Yes. You know what? I don't want to alarm you before we start discussing this, Gina, but we are not alone. That's right. We have a special guest. You know her as a writer, a digital strategist, and of course the podcaster of her own show, Waiting to Exhale. The one, the only, Wynter Mitchell. How are you doing today, Wynter?
I'm so excited to be joining the both of you today to talk about this.
So happy that you are here. This is a dream come true. I've been wanting to have you on the show forever, so I'm super excited.
It took you too long, by the way, Patrick.
We were so happy to have you on the show that we gave you this movie.
That's exactly it. That makes so much sense. This is basically my life.
I mean, we could have given you the final conflict, which is, way wilder.
Thank you so much. I'm bowing. You can't see me, but I am bowing. Thank you so much, very much for that.
I mean, yes, like everyone wants the fancier ones, the highbrow ones, or at least the ones that everyone wants to talk about. But also, it's harder to make fun of them. Whereas the Omen gives you plenty of opportunities to make fun of dry ass white people.
Yes,
in
sir.
boardrooms, just yapping their ass off about things that don't ever come into play.
Nope. And it was interesting to me, and I'm sure we're gonna go super deep into this.
Yes.
But man, I didn't know that much about agriculture.
But do you now?
I do now.
Okay. So it's edutainment is what you're telling us.
Right, exactly.
Perfect.
Exactly.
Yes, I wrote down at one point because Robert Foxworth, who we haven't had the opportunity to discuss on this show, but has always played a just sterling silver asshole. Even if he's the villain, if he's the hero, he's just always kind of an asshole on screen. And here he plays a guy who's decided that Thorn Corporation is going to go into famine as a way to make money. And my first question to the both of you is, how does famine equal $$, $$?
I mean, I guess if you cut short the worldwide food supply and then sell wheat or something, I don't know.
Yeah. Because you can get food from other places. It's like oil, you only have to dig up from certain places.
Right.
But food, like, you can grow it yourself if you want. It's not easy, but I also don't see this as a big money maker.
I liked the idea that every time he went through this long, drawn-out explanation of his philosophy on how he's going to achieve this, everybody would kind of like remind him as an aside, the way rich white people do. Well, that's unethical. Yeah. Just sort of like as a warning, but not like as they're going to actually stop him from doing it. It was like, that's unethical. Meanwhile, it was a lot of that. I feel like I heard unethical like 20 times in that film.
Yeah, everyone kind of tosses out unethical as a way to avoid saying no, don't,
Exactly.
stop. It's just kind of like, it's not a hard pass, but it's a kind of like, we don't talk about that in public. Well,
Exactly.
we're not in public, and I'm throwing all the money in the world into this. And they spend a good half an hour of this movie setting up that they're buying up land, that the people they're buying from are being killed, that this is a big problem that will come back to bite them in the ass. And you're like, well, why does the devil want to get into this?
Patrick, this is the second movie that we have watched that involved like the devil and a lot of white people in boardrooms.
Yes.
Because there was also the Visitor.
Right. This and The Visitor have a lot in common. I wish they had everything in common. And by that, I mean people driving with little Tweety birds in their car that caused them to crash into a soccer field.
And bizarrely, both movies star Lance Henriksen. I mean, he found his niche early on in his career.
Yes.
In league with the devil. Now, it does. He has a less clear pathway to power here, as he does in The Visitor, because here he's just kind of he basically advises the Antichrist to read the Bible, which is like, okay, you got to put a person in there just to do that. That seems like a very low bar to clear. Whereas in The Visitor, if he helps give birth to the Antichrist, he will gain ownership of the Atlanta Hawks. Now that is a plot.
I forgot about that. It's like, sell your soul to the devil so you can own this second-rate basketball team.
Yeah, they were in the ABA at the time. They weren't even an NBA franchise. Like, get in on the ground floor of the ABA. It can't lose. And he has sex on fur coats.
Right. Which is what they
sad.
all did in the late 60s throughout the 70s. So I feel like that was required.
With the exception of Lee Grant in this movie, who seems to, maybe if she has sex on anything, it's probably in multi-part sweater sets.
Oh, yes.
She is bathed in wool, baby. From the frame one, if she isn't in a nightgown, she is in a multi-part sweater set.
She knew what the end game was, as we all were subjected to. I mean, that was a shock, but she knew what was coming. And I think she had to be dressed to kill, right?
Yeah, she has to be dressed in something that's reasonably flammable if what you're going to do is orgasmically yell, Damien!
Oh, my God.
And then she goes up in flames. Like, her only purpose is to stab one middle-aged man, and then she gets blown up real good.
That's an easy check.
Which is like a rip-off. I mean, if you're going to rip off, any movie, why are you going to rip off The Exorcist 2?
Yeah.
Because it also features somebody who inexplicably just bursts into flame.
Yes, it does.
Unbelievable. You know what I thought was really interesting about sort of the way it was all set up in the beginning is that you arrive on, it's this harried like trek through Israel.
Yeah.
And we get there, and what, it's supposed to be like a week after the last film, right? And then...
just days after.
Days after.
Picking right up.
And then we leapfrog 7 years later. I'm just... The choices in this... The narrative of this movie, like, I feel like it was set up so that it would be like for... Hodges and Seltzer, Seltzer created the characters. Like, he wanted this to be his Godfather trilogy. Yes. Yeah. But, like, with demons, with Satan. And
it's a perfectly reasonable goal given how things were going at the time. Like, they have a hit, you have a bit of a formula, and you have a family's rise to power, right? Mm-hmm. So it's not the worst idea in the world.
No.
It really isn't.
Right.
But... they kind of decide, like, all right, we got to fill it with these deaths, but we have to fill it with some other kind of plot. And then someone says, well, what about boardroom, intrigue that doesn't go anywhere? Get it quick, get a typewriter. And then they just fill it with, like, these tanks aren't working. The P-84, like, nobody cares. Like, none of it comes to anything. It's just like people have to discover that Damien is the devil or the Antichrist, and then they have to die. But you don't have to fill it with all this other shit.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, that's why some of the deaths are so spectacular that I feel like they added them in later to, ensure that the audience does wake up at certain points.
Yes.
Right.
It's like, okay, we're losing the audience here. Have a dude get, sliced like a deli salami in half in an elevator.
That's literally how they presented it, by the way, Gina. They were like, it was an aside right after lunch. We'll just have a guy get sliced like a piece of pastrami. Throw that in there.
So let's begin at the beginning. What a wonderful place to start with the Omen 2. And of course, as Wynter mentioned, we start in what appears to be Israel, or at least in the Middle East. Maybe a Chiron comes up. I don't really know. But this movie starts with a bang, because although Richard Donner was meant to direct this, he wasn't. And this sequence is filmed by the movie's first director. And in it, he's taking a little bit of that Superman flavor. That's right. You will believe an old man can beat morning traffic to a restaurant by the porch. I've never seen so much effort be put into, like, this guy's really driving and sheep are in the way.
Can I tell you something?
Of course.
I'm literally crying right now. I've been to Israel.
Oh,
and
great. Expert testimony.
Expert testimony. I've been to Israel, and that's literally how all old men act there. They have the superhuman strength. They might be walking at like 1 mile per 7 hours, but these guys have superhuman strength. So that's how I knew immediately, besides all the the signage, that he was in Israel. I was like, oh, he must be in Israel. He's 9,000 years old, and he's literally in a rush and getting there. So
like that, horns don't exist. He just has to yell and wave his arm at people. And like, what are you doing driving in the street? It's like it's a newfangled thing. So it turns out that this guy is from the first movie. He's the guy who gives Thorn the daggers of Maganon or
Bugenhagen. His name is Bugenhagen.
Bugenhagen. Everyone knows the Boogs.
That guy was in a lot of movies in the 80s, usually playing like someone who knows a prophecy or lives in a cave. He always has that kind of look about him.
This must be what like having lunch with someone who's really into QAnon is like. He starts right in with prophecy. You're like, I don't even have mozzarella sticks yet. Let's calm this down. But it turns out he is, in his words, too old to travel to Chicago to tell someone you've got to kill this kid because he is the Antichrist. So he's going to send this other archaeologist in his place. But before they go, he's got to look at this ancient graffiti on the wall. So they travel out, and they, in what feels like they spent money on the set, and god damn it, you're going to see every inch of it. Mm-hmm. They get down into the bottom, and as soon as they do, it all crumbles down on top of them. And after a movie where people get, metal poles staked through their entire body, and a photographer gets his entire head lopped off and it flies up into the air, it's a little bit of a letdown to go, oh, here's some foam rocks.
Yeah, but they really make up for it with other deaths in this movie.
This show, it's a slow warm-up. But I really did not figure that the previously on The Omen would be presented via wall painting. Like, that is quite a statement to make. The Omen 2 then pulls the patented Lifetime Movies 7 years later move. And then we have the dinner at the Thorn House. And everyone that you know and love from Omen movies is there. Oh, no, this is an entirely different cast. Different people, No one that you saw before. Bugenhagen is the only one who kind of ports over from the previous movie. But we do have some stellar casting here. You got William Holden, who I love regardless of his participation in this motion picture. He was actually offered the lead in The Omen and turned it down, and then said, I'm never turning that down again.
I was gonna say, that made a lot of money.
That made a lot of money. And then this came out. It's like, oh, fuck, I chose the wrong one.
You know what's interesting? How did he take that after Cary Grant?
No,
sorry,
Gregory Peck.
it's not.
Gregory Peck.
Gregory Peck.
Yes.
I get them confused all the time. How did he
like decide not to, and then Peck goes, I'll take Holden's leftovers?
Yes. Yes.
Well, I mean, remember that the Gregory Peck's character was killed at the end of The Omen. Like, everybody died.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Like Lee Remick's character, famously, fell out of the hospital window, and then I think Gregory Peck's character got shot.
Yes,
If I'm not mistaken. So yeah, this is a whole, this is supposed to be his aunt and uncle now.
Yeah, this is the other half of the Thorne family. But I think Peck thought it was fucking ridiculous too. But like, he had a house payment, and like the check cleared, and he's like, okay, I'll do it.
So am I the only one who kind of did a mental deep fake and kept kind of, the kid that plays Damien looks a lot like Joaquin Phoenix. and I kept like thinking of like Space Camp era when he was still Leaf Phoenix.
Yes.
Sure.
Because he's kind of got that sort of intensity about him. Mm-hmm. And I could definitely picture little 12 or 13-year-old Leaf Phoenix playing the son of the devil.
100%.
Yes. But then you wouldn't have gotten that wonderful Shakespearean tone, because apparently Jonathan Scott Taylor, the kid who plays Damien Thorne, was a Royal Shakespeare Company actor. And so even though he's left Britain,
even though he's raised
2,
by American parents, he sounds like Kenneth Branagh.
Mother.
One day I will be owner of Thorne.
Oh, hello. Are we ready for a hot dog? Every time this kid wanders into frame, I think a selection from The Sound of Music is about to play. Yeah. He just seems a little fashy to me. And maybe that's just great casting.
Well, yeah, I mean...
Yeah, he's the ultimate fascist. He's the Antichrist.
I mean, Aunt Marian knew.
Yeah.
She had she'd been waiting for that dinner, by the way.
Oh yeah. and that is what I paused on. So they decide they're going to have Marion's like a totes real B to Damien on his way out to school. And although she loves Mark, she's a little cold to Damien. So later that night, she decides, all right, well, the museum guy's here. It's time to air out all my dirty laundry. I think Damien's trash. There's something wrong with him. There's a reason your brother tried to kill him, and you can't leave the company to him. And if you do, and this is her warning, her threat is, I'm going to leave that $100 million to charity if you don't do what I say. If that is your threat, you're too fucking rich.
Yeah.
I will give this money away. Like, I think they got plenty. They're doing okay. Also, on the table, a pewter bird. Just a bird sitting right next to the flowers.
Well, what better things are there to buy with that kind of money than just birds? Just collect birds.
Yeah.
Decorative birds for your table, for your desk. Birds. Buy them today. Aunt Marion's played by Sylvia Saint. And if you have not looked at a picture of Sylvia Saint circa 1940, do yourself a favor. That woman was good looking.
Yes, she was in Beetlejuice.
Yes.
Right? Yeah.
She's fantastic.
She's got this wonderful voice. I love it so much.
Give me a break. I'm not your coach.
She was she came there with an agenda,
Yes.
And everyone else just interesting to see that that we start with all of this, everything that we're knowing already about Damien, and then everything we're about to learn about agriculture and in the agricultural industry.
Yeah, the lesson's about to begin.
Yeah, I was still confused. And by the way, I'm going to note a lot of times I'm confused during this movie.
Sure.
Why she chose this moment. Like, what, between Bogan, Hagen in Israel freaked out in the streets, and then we fast forward into this sort of moment. What happened in between that time? Was it the threat of Damien becoming the heir to the Thorn? Because there's a moment where it could totally pivot into like an episode of Dallas. And it just doesn't.
It really should have. That would have been awesome. But I don't know. The reason for why it's now is the movie needs to begin. I don't think there's any other particular reason other than they've waited this long to invite Aunt Marion because she causes a fuss when you're just trying to have veal. That's what it comes down to. But we've had 2 deaths. You've been crushed by rocks. Well, how are you going to follow up that kind of blockbuster? How about an old woman having a heart attack and falling out of bed while a crow looks at her?
Yeah.
I mean, crows are pretty fucking terrifying.
Yeah.
They are.
I mean, you wake up in the morning, you're having your morning coffee, and you look out, your window, and there's like just one on your fucking lawn.
Yeah.
It's like, it's looking at you like, today, motherfucker.
Yeah. And then it flies away like, maybe not. Or maybe not.
Or maybe I'll be back.
How about that?
My version of a crow is a squirrel who often fights with the other squirrel that he lives with. And they are constantly at one another in the morning. They can't get along, but they can't also leave because the sex is too good. So it's a whole thing. So poor Aunt Marion has a heart attack. And
by the way, she killed that heart attack, by the way.
She does.
It's
not for a lack of realism.
No.
Cut to the Davidson Military Academy in Wisconsin. So we finally have some cheese on this podcast. We're introduced, of course, to the already mentioned here, Lance Henriksen, who has entered the chat looking like a snack. That jawline can cut glass.
Yeah. Yeah.
This movie truly lacks for sex on a fur coat. We never get him out of uniform. Not that he doesn't look good in it.
He's so slim.
Yes, he's a slip of a thing.
His face doesn't quite have that like tooled leather wallet look yet, but it's getting there. It's getting there.
Exactly.
Give him a couple more summers in Malibu, and it's going to come across. But then, as slim as he is, the antidote to that is how every car in this movie looks like the fucking Titanic. Like, you should have pontoons on either side of them. It is the largest car movie I've ever seen. It's every single one of them is gigantic. That limo looks like a minibus.
Well, that was the era.
Yes.
The land yacht years.
The land yacht years.
At the academy, we're introduced to a bully of some kind called Teddy, and immediately, like, oh wow, they found the Chungus of all teens to be the bully in this movie, and Evil Speak just liberally steals every moment it can from this movie, Gina.
Yeah, it's amazing how many of these, because the mid to late 70s, thanks to The Exorcist, into the 80s there were just so many Antichrist movies, demonic possession movies, and then they all really just shamelessly lifted from each other.
Yes, they're all in conversation, but Evil Speak also has that military academy. There was just like this, it was in the air. It was the time you sent kids to the military for some reason.
Well, you want to have children. You don't necessarily want to raise them. you have too many board meetings. You don't have time to spend with children.
No, they're gross and they smell, especially at this age. And they take really long showers so they can whack it. It's a whole thing. But it's during this time that we hear that journalist Joan Hart will be visiting the Thorn Corporation because she has a couple questions about, this wall that might have some links to the Antichrist or something. She just has a couple questions. And they say Joan Hart like half a dozen times, but every time they do, I hear Melissa Joan Hart. It's automatic. The other thing that they keep repeating over again is Yagail's Wall. Yagail's Wall. They found Yagail's Wall. They're going to ship Yagail's Wall. Have you seen Yagail's Wall? It's the 90-day fiance of the Omen. Like everyone's talking about it, but not enough people have seen it to really know the ins and outs. Like, it's been around for a really long time. What season do you even start in?
I like the fact that somehow it was extracted to go to this museum.
Yes.
This Thorn Museum, which isn't the Thorn Museum just the museum in Chicago?
Yes.
Okay.
By all appearances it is.
Okay.
And believe me, Chicago, they know how to build a museum.
Right.
That's a fine looking piece of work they
Absolutely.
got there. But my kid loves it. When we visit my wife's parents in Madison, Wisconsin, we always do Chicago on our way out, and the kiddo digs it. Of course, we've never had anyone burst into flames while we're there, but it's 2020. Anything could happen.
Anything is possible.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, 2020 needs to at some point have somebody get sliced in half by an elevator cable.
Yes. Yes, I have a list, by the way. I have a very long, detailed list.
That's the problem with this. There's only so many elevator cables, and there's so many eligible nominees.
Exactly.
And someone's going to get snubbed, and you're going to wish that person got cut in half.
This person would have been much better for this.
In the interviews for the very lovely Shout Factory Blu-ray set for the Open that I have, Lee Grant is very proud of the turn that her character takes. Spoilers, she's in on it. But the movie doesn't so much hide that fact. It's really much more like the bad nannies in the first one. Like from
she
the
does a lot of like, kind of smirking and meaningful stares and all.
I mean, she does a better time hiding her guilt when she murders her husband on Columbo than she does here.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you have fewer opportunities to take Columbo up into a small aircraft. And he identifies that she's the murderer based on her purse. By the way, I'm rewatching Columbo.
It's going to be our next project after Dish by Dish. Just one more thing, a Columbo rewatch project.
Don't threaten me with a good time. Oh, my God.
I was always, the thing is, like, for me, Lee Grant, this is the weird thing, and this is going to sound weird because I do love film. I do love television. But Lee Grant, she's always in defending your life. And I just always see her, ever since then, in that role. So seeing her being kind of a little afraid, a little fake, it was very off-putting.
No, I can totally see that when you put someone in a very specific box because you like that.
Oh yeah,
movie.
she's definitely kind of. I tend to confuse her a lot with Jessica Walter.
Yes,
both of them kind of play that sort of like waspy mom who maybe kind of awful, but she only does a slightly good job of hiding how awful she might be.
Right.
And here she has that very full, overgrown Dorothy Hamill look going on.
Yeah.
And of course, we're told from the get-go, she's the second wife. Dun, dun, dun. Is there anything more evil than the second wife?
Which is worse, is she's the second wife or the whore of Babylon? I mean, honestly, who can tell?
As a second wife, I yes, absolutely. You're absolutely right.
Well, it's good to know that finally these predispositions I have are paying off.
She's giving me a lot of Chris McNeil, which I very much feel like that, again, we're going back to, I saw a thing and now I'm going to make it my thing because the studio gave me money.
Yeah.
So,
Right. Yeah. I can see that.
You know what I mean? Like, so just from the fashion, from the look, from the demeanor, what if Chris McNeil was in on it with Satan?
Sure. Listen, there are worse ideas, and they're called The Visitor. But this movie, it's all a conversation. Like, they're just, 20th Century Fox is like, listen, if we're going to pay for The Omen 2, they're going to expect The Omen. So, like, let's give them The Omen, but let's also give them The Exorcist. Let's also do this. Let's give them a little bit of all of it, all in one buffet. It's like a Las Vegas buffet. You get everything that you want.
Yeah, I definitely want pancakes and ribs on the same plate. I definitely want that. That sounds good.
Put it on the
little
VHS cover.
cheesecake
A little cheesecake on top of it. Maybe some asparagus. That's
If you like pancakes and ribs, you'll love The Omen too. So the aforementioned Joan Hart finally does show up, dressed like Carmen Sandiego. And she barges her way into Thorne's limo and basically gives him the rundown. He's like, "You're crazy. Get out of my car." And then she's like, "You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to keep a low profile. I'm going to dress also in all red. Show up to a tween's football practice. No one will notice me." And she sees Damien, and she's like, "Oh, fuck." Makes a run for it. Gets in her car, beats feet. Maybe half a mile down the road, car stops. So she gets out, sees a farm, says, "I got to get my purse because there's no way that they're going to let me into the house dressed like this. I'm going to have to pay them." But as soon as she gets out of the car, well, who's back? But it's our old friend, the Crow. And instead of just standing over an old lady as she keels over, now he's going to get actively involved. And
What does this mean? It's my favorite thing, Patrick.
A wheelchair death?
No. Okay,
Oh.
my second favorite thing.
Okay, what is your second favorite thing?
An obvious mannequin.
Oh, goodness. Poor Nancy's mom. You loved Nancy's mom in Nightmare.
I love Nancy's mom. Yep. Give me an obvious dummy death, and I'm so happy. I'm like that. I'm like that picture of like Leonardo DiCaprio pointing from Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
Yes.
I'm going to get right on Twitter after this and post that. So she gets out of the car. That Crow instantly starts attacking her. And we get a puppet on person attack, which we can't see it because they refuse to show us. So we just get her play-by-play of, "Oh, no, not my eyes. Oh, now my eyes. It took my eyes." Like,
because the bird can be reasoned with, and they please don't poke me in the eyes.
Jesus Christ, not my eyes. No, my eyes. Yes. You practically told that bird where to strike. And then she rolls into the ditch. And by now that red outfit has begun to look like kind of a sad bathrobe.
Yeah.
And she strumbles out. And then we hear the sound of a truck. A truck that has, I really want to emphasize this. The front of the truck is absolutely vertical flat. It's a cab over. So when she wanders out and the guy can't stop and that truck hits her, the thing you most expect is going to happen. Her feet leave the ground and she flies upward and then into the top of the trailer that the truck is hauling, because that's how gravity works. When you hit something flat, you don't go in and up. She's like lifted like Superman. It's just science.
I haven't seen a series of follies leading to that injury since Nordberg. And then they just when you thought she was out, she's literally pulled back in, then up, then down. Literally. It was Nordbergian. Jesus Christ.
Man.
I'm disappointed in you, Patrick, though, because you skip past what is the only genuinely disturbing, nightmarish death in this movie.
What is that?
And that's an elderly man falling under ice and then getting trapped.
Oh, that happens after this.
No, I think it's before it.
No, it isn't. I have it all in sequential order. Believe me.
Then I'm not disappointed in you. I renege my disappointment in you.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5 sentences down, I have the ice is gonna break.
Yeah, that's like everything else is kind of funny and out there. That one's like, oh, that's actually kind of awful.
Oh, that's fucking nightmarish. We're back in the legacy territory.
Yeah.
Where that panic thing I have with the legacy, where that lady comes up and she can't get out of the swimming pool, that's the same thing. I can't handle that, Gina. It's too much. It's too real. I don't want that in the Omen 2. I want people sliced in half like... I want people flying when they get hit by a truck and have their head run over and then their skull reforms, because that's how bones work. So yeah, we have Mark's birthday party. This is where all this happens. So we get to see the most evil of pursuits, snowmobiling in Wisconsin. We get to see William Holden take a snowball to the face. Like, come on, man. He's a screen legend.
Yeah.
Don't throw a snowball at William Holden, all right?
Yeah.
He's a fucking bridge over the River Kwai.
Yeah.
Don't fuck with that man. And then this birthday party, not since Bloody Birthday, have we seen an overabundance of people show up to a child's birthday party, including the guy who's saying, let's own the land and charge people to grow food. He's at this fucking birthday party.
Because why not? Why wouldn't he be?
And then they have fireworks. How special.
That cake was pretty impressive, by the way.
Oh, yeah. And it's also a Final Destination thing because they break the ice right away.
Right.
Oh, fuck. This movie is Final Destination, kind of. Now, this is a question I have for you guys, because the Thorne family has a bit of a history when it comes to birthday parties. They don't end well. The last Thorne birthday party I attended, a nanny threw herself off the 4th floor and hung herself and smashed into the 3rd via rope. And they're like, let's have another big birthday party.
Lightning can't strike twice. Surely we can't have 2 birthday parties where someone dies horribly.
This guy lives, they're having this hockey game, which for a birthday party, okay. Like laser tag is too good for you, fine. Let's do hockey out on your own personal backyard lake. The guy falls through the ice, and then you get to see him carried by the current. And
it's horrible. Horrible.
Yeah, horrible. And
it is really bad. And I stopped taking notes because it just freaks me out.
You couldn't like take notes and cover your eyes at the same time.
It's hard. It's really difficult.
But do you know what's interesting in this film is that you can tell whenever a character is either introduced or shows up on screen, like a counter above their head, an imaginary counter. It's like it just starts ticking down to how soon they're going to be murdered or Damien's going to do away with them.
All right, Wynter, write that down in an envelope, mail it to yourself, then mail one to the Library of Congress because you just got a great movie idea. And that is every time a character is introduced, a clock appears over their head until where they're going to die. And some of them won't even die on camera.
Right.
It's just years down the road.
Yeah. Yeah.
I like it.
They're just going to put Justin Timberlake in it, so... Thank you.
Why wouldn't you? He's box office gold. Gold, Jerry, gold. We're back to the fucking military academy where almost nothing happens, and we get to see this. I drew a funny picture of the history teacher, and then he exasperates himself asking me dates. And you're like, how long is this going to go on? The answer, 2 minutes and 15 seconds.
Oh, my God. Was it that long?
I timed it. It is 2 minutes and 15 seconds of him asking various dates and getting answers and then growing kind of frustrated with it all until Lance Henriksen is finally like, can you two knock it off? Like, finally someone thinks like I think.
The narcissist in me kept going, I know who that is. I knew that. Of course. So
this would be a fun party game if you memorized the entire thing and then had your husband, quiz you in front of everyone else at the party. Like, holy shit, she knows a lot of dates. And
Exactly.
One guy in the back of the party with a black T-shirt on is like, they're doing the Damien Omen too. I knew that.
They're perfect for each other.
Yeah. That guy in a black T-shirt is me. Lance Henriksen pulls Damien aside and says, guess what? You can read all about your life. It's a little thing called the Bible. Check it out. And so Damien does. And then, he does two things. Takes a run, yells at God, why me? And finally looks at his bald spot in a shower. Because that's what guys do. Is it thinning back there? What number does it say of when my thinning part?
Oh my! It says 999. Thank God.
Woo! So close yet so far. And then the soundtrack has a fucking heart attack. Like the Phantom of the Opera is in that boy's bathroom, and he runs not quite at Tom Cruise running department style, and yells, "Why me? Like, why not you? Fucking, you're already rich. Like, probably you were going to be the Antichrist.
Right.
If not you, some other rich asshole.
And you would have known him. That would have been your buddy, so it wouldn't have mattered.
Yeah. 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 Listen, everyone's got their something. Like Jim has a stepdad who's kind of an asshole and drinks too much. And, Rachel, she has that older sister who runs with a weird crowd. And Damien's the Antichrist.
Yeah.
But you know what? When we all get together and play D&D, none of it matters. Oh. And then there's this whole thing about Passerian, who I was very astonished to learn when I looked up who this actor was and what his character is called, that it's not Passerian. It's Passerian, because everyone in the movie, I'm convinced, is saying Passerian.
I mean, maybe they are, just, the credits are wrong.
You know what? Stranger things have happened. I know, because I'm living in 2020.
Yeah.
So the class goes to a factory, because that's what you do in military school. You get into the finest of Chevy vans and go on a field trip to a factory of some kind that one of their dads owns. And
everybody's dads own factories, in this military academy.
Yeah.
yeah, there's the amount of factory ownership is very high here. But for some reason, the P-84 is malfunctioning. And if it doesn't start working, they'll never be able to make money from famine or whatever. Like, reminds me of, like, that time I learned that Enron got people to invest in weather predictions. It's like,
Wow.
what the fuck? How do you make money out of this bullshit?
Wow.
It's just like, what the fuck? They're all evil. Like, oh, this corporation's run by the Antichrist. Like, fuck, they're all run by the Antichrist.
Right.
Like Jim Antichrist. Jerry Antichrist. But wouldn't you know it, the P-84 malfunctions and Passerian gets gassed with some kind of gas.
And
This is not
immediately
one of the
turns
best guys.
green.
Yeah, he does.
Literally.
And the guy who's fixing the P-84 with a wrench, they keep... whoever wrote this down must very proud of himself. Well, this is how P-84s work. Every other joint is a letter with a number. Like, well, I don't want to know that. I don't want to see them go through a check of 5 different levers before they finally hit the S-22 that explodes. And he throws up oatmeal, and Passerian barely makes it up the stairs, and then he turns green.
Yeah.
And Damien's looking at him like, that's what you get. And you're like, you don't even know that guy. How does this help you? How does killing a bunch of guys and then almost killing half your class help you take over the world.
I mean, all I could think of was he's just, killing his competition.
Yeah.
But he doesn't kill any of the kids that he's in the military academy with. He's just killing off Passarian. He's like competition in what? The mustache race? Like Passarian's got you beat. Oh, yeah. But thank God we meet at this point. We finally go to the hospital and Meshach Taylor is there in his screen debut. That's right. Hollywood himself.
Sliced like a sandwich.
It was impressive. I gotta say, for a debut role, he doesn't act at all like he's gonna be sliced like a hoagie in about three minutes.
He's got his whole life ahead of him.
His whole life ahead of him. The way he is trying to decipher the marrow cells, the way he is just super intent on communicating his findings. He's got his notebook. He places that discovery, that little piece of, what do you call those little things of glass? You put the
vial.
He had a little vial thing that he had a case for. That he placed that
everyone has a vial carrying
case. I mean, he's just a doctor, right? I was like, where is this coming from? Is this
sometimes a doctor meets a very special blood specimen. He's like, I gotta put you someplace special, someplace you can't get hurt by a runaway elevator cable.
Exactly. He was,
and that case that no one destroys that case. That case lives. He dies.
He was committed.
And he dies, and he's just a spectacular fashion. And you can't tell anything wrong's going to happen when he wanders into that elevator area, and it's all red. It's like, he's totally going to make it to the floor he wants to get it to. He hits 16. He flies all the way up to the top, and then immediately falls all the way to the bottom. And he's like, "Oh, my elbows!" But then he's like, "Okay." I was like, "I'm just gonna back up to the back of this elevator and just breathe a sigh of relief." What's that cable? Sliced him in half like a bagel.
Yeah, that scene fucked me up when I saw this as a kid.
No, it should. It is as good as the pane of glass death in the original. I don't think the movie is as good, but if you compare those two deaths, like, they are tops.
I mean, look, if you're going to talk about pound for pound, actual death that feels real.
Yeah.
Between him and Sylvia, if they had just an award ceremony for this film, neck and neck, nail biter to the end of the ceremony.
And it helps that someone finally dies that you care about, because up until now, you've had like people who yell about the Antichrist, or just like jerks at work.
Yeah.
And like, he's the first person you're like, well, I don't want to see him die. And then he dies. You're like, well, I don't know who to trust. And then the guy from the museum finally gets that package in the mail of a group of daggers and a lot of letters. It's like Dead to Me. And then spoilers for Dead to Me. And so he's like, oh my God, I got to lock this in a drawer, and I gotta tell my boss about this. So he's off to yell at William Holden. So here's what I've learned. Damien's dad tried to kill him with these daggers, and I got him. And then his face is on Yale's wall, and I'm going to make sure it really is. So I'm going to go to New York, and you better come with me. He's like, pass. But who overhears this but Mark? Now, imagine for a second overhearing that your cousin is the Antichrist. Like, most people overhear, like, mom and dad are getting a divorce, or your Uncle Jerry gambled away the house.
But on the other hand, though, I mean, whomst among us has not had, a shitty relative that we might think could be the Antichrist.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, whether it's a sibling or a sketchy cousin or someone like that.
Yeah, everything you're telling me, I'm like, yeah, I can totally see that. Yeah.
Yes, I can. It's vivid. So Mark does what any of us would do. He waits an entire day, wakes up, decides to take a walk. Because that'll clear things up. Damien runs after him and he's like, I'm going to hide on this log. No, he found me. I'm going to hide behind these trees. And Damien's kind of like, Mark, why are you running away? And he's like, well, if you must know, you're the Antichrist. Your mom was a jackal. And he's like, maybe. But Mark, we're brothers.
Oh my God.
And Mark's like, I'm just not down with it. It's just like, it was one thing when I found you yakking it into my sock and you're like, it's the only sock I could find. But this is like a really big deal. And he's like, sorry, I have to crush your head now. And now this kid who's playing Mark is given the very unglamorous task of acting like his brain is being crushed. And
well, it's supposed to be an aneurysm. He's giving him a brain aneurysm, which, again, my worst fucking nightmare.
Yeah.
Listen, aneurysms are real. Getting sliced in half by an elevator cable, that's the kind of spectacular thing I come to the Omen for. I didn't show up here just so that old ladies could keel out of bed and a 12-year-old could go, ooh, my head hurts, and yell a whole bunch unconvincingly. It's just, you've given this kid a bad task of having his head crushed like that guy from like Mark on The Kids in the Hall is doing it from half a block away. And then to add insult to this particular injury, we hear about it's an aneurysm at the funeral via voiceover.
Oh my God.
Like, we don't even have a scene. It's just played out on a locked off shot of William Holden going, ugh. Oh, why did I say no to the first one and say yes to this one? Why?
Oh God.
Turns out the guy who's the head of the museum went to New York, but then decided to seek asylum in a random church. Is that something you can do? Can you just like, it's like the guy who took up residence at the that asylum in London when he got brought up on rape charges. You can just do that in a church?
I'm pretty sure you actually can.
Yeah.
Oh, shit. That's in the laws? Great. I'm writing that down.
So now you can go out and commit crimes.
Can do crimes.
I don't know if you can get
asylum
food deliveries. I don't know if Amazon Prime delivers there, but
DoorDash, I need that Philly cheesesteak. I robbed a bank, but I'm in a room surrounded by crosses, so just leave it with the priest.
oh wow.
And then Damien wins a sword. Good for him. I guess the date thing really worked out for him. Then we have this confluence of events, and I think Wynter, you nailed it on the head when they said like they wanted to do The Godfather, because you have one of those sequences where Damien's at this cotillion where it's trying to pull off this Star Wars like trick, this incredible sci-fi conceit. Whereas in Star Wars, it's like laser swords and the Force. And here it's girls will pay attention to Damien. Like, God, get the fuck out of here.
Right.
No girls paying attention to that kid.
Well, he's got that, what if he started to build that like kind of satanic mind control?
True. He's getting better. He's flexing those muscles. And then at the same time, you have William Holden checking out a brick wall and a train yard, and then the fatal destinations thing starts to happen where one of the trains just decides time to choo-choo now, and starts pushing a bunch of trains towards the guy who's the head of the museum, and then of course, the greatest silent killer of all, trains, snatches him up.
Right.
And he gets caught in the little thing that connects trains together from his hip, which I don't know how that works. He's just grabbed up by the hip, and then he gets smushified, and you think, oh no, they're both dead. But no, William Holden is fine. And then we find out that he flies back to Chicago, says, have Damien meet me at the museum. And they go by different cars. And Lee Grant says, this is crazy. This is nuts. Hey, what's over there? stabamifies William Holden in the guts. And it's like, ha ha, you never saw that coming. I'm the second wife, motherfucker.
You should have known.
And then she's like, I was always his. When we watched movies in our own house, we cuddled together. Didn't you see it? And then Damien doesn't even go downstairs. He just hears her go, Damien! And he's like, okay, lit on fire. You're done for. And then she gets lit on fire, and he wanders outside, and he's like, hey, meet me back here next time when it'll be the final conflict. And then out of nowhere, we get a guest appearance from two people I think you both have heard of. It's been a couple years, but they've been in the news. 2 Corinthians, the 2 Corinthians. And that's the end of the movie. That's pretty much it. Any final thoughts on Damien the Omen 2, Wynter?
Here's my final thought. Patrick, I love you, and I really appreciate you asking me to be on the show. Mm-hmm. This is one of the worst films. The first time I even heard about this film, there was a little satellite station in San Francisco where I was born and raised called KBHK. They had the same library of material they showed constantly, and they were kind enough to show it to you in succession. So they did Omen 1 on Friday, and then the next Friday they would show Omen 2. And I just never had the urgency to see. There's something about babies and demons that have always been... I can watch anything, but babies and I think it's the Rosemary Baby of it all. I find Rosemary's Baby to be another film that I hate. Yeah. But I don't know. There was something about this, the urgency of this film, coupled with the Dallas of it all, coupled with the constant corporate espionage intrigue that seemed wildly out of place. Right. This film just came out of nowhere.
Yeah, I mean, the highs are really hot. They're fun. The deaths are fun, but it's not. It doesn't really grab you in between.
Right. Right.
Not really. Gina, what do you have to wrap up with?
I feel like the whole reason for this movie to exist was, let's make the same movie but way gorier. Mm-hmm. And I don't know, that's just something. Yeah, as many horror movies I've come to see, I've really come to appreciate the ones that are very subtle in how they get to you. And I think the original Omen. Now, granted, there are a couple pretty spectacular deaths in that.
Yeah.
But these ones the ones in this one are so over the top and coupled with the very long, boring scenes of Damien getting various father figures and Damien in school and board meetings. It's just it none of it meshes together very well.
Yeah, they had 45 minutes of movie, and they're like, well, wait a second, this is supposed to be an hour and 45 minutes.
Yeah, and then you compare it to the final conflict, which is just so balls out insane. They just completely did away with any pretense of, well, let's make this a regular movie with a couple good scares in it. Yeah,
I mean, I don't want to spoil it, but that ender is a real one for the record books.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, but that means that it's time to choose your own death venture. That's right. If you were forced to choose a way to die out of the ways that are presented in this motion picture, which one would you choose and why? Up for offer here, we have Get Buried Alive in Israel. We have Get Your Eyes Pecked Out and then get crushed by a truck. We have fall through the ice during a hockey game and get carried away by the current. Wow. We get poisoned to death in a factory explosion while a military academy kind of looks on and it's like, see, you had that coming. Then you get sliced in half by elevator cable. Then you got crushed by a train. Heart attack out of your own bed, brain aneurysm in the snow while being taunted, and then stabbed in the gut by your second wife, or get explodamified in the basement of a museum. Did I miss any?
I think you got it.
All right. Yeah. It's a lot to choose from. But Wynter, as our guest, I choose you to go first.
I would hope that it would be obvious, but I just, I want to go out like I come in. Show up, be the only person you didn't expect to see here, and then make a grand exit. And that's Meshach Taylor.
Yeah.
Elevator death.
Yeah, the only person who comes out of this with a real career. Yeah, okay.
Right.
Listen, there's a lot to look forward to, even being cut in half. Like, you've got many seasons of television to look forward to, and you're going to be a mannequin. Yeah, you're going to wear those triangle sunglasses, and you're going to wear a caftan. It's going to be a whole thing. You're going to inexplicably be in the sequel, and it's not even really a sequel. It's an unnamed thing. She's not really a mannequin. Anyways.
You justify the relationship between a dummy and a dummy.
Sure. Yeah. Sure. And then, like, James Spader is in the first one, and he's kind of prissy, and you're like, well, that's a weird turn from you.
Yeah.
Sure. Gina, what say you?
Do you even need to ask?
You want the obvious dummy death?
Yes.
Yeah, of course. Now, you're going to get your eyes pecked out by a fucking crow at the beginning of this. Like, it's not instant
I
dummy.
mean, I don't need my eyes. I can barely see anyway.
Great.
And you get to dress like Carmen Sandiego, which is a fun
I love
departure.
I love it. That's a feature, not a bug.
Yeah. Oh boy, like so much to choose from, but I think I'm gonna go with poisoned to death in a factory explosion.
Sure.
I'm gonna go the Passerian route only because I get to rock that stash, and he's got a real kicky curly haircut going on there. It's a whole look. Plus, he gets to travel to India, and I've always wanted to do that. So. Yeah. There's a little side benefit there. All right, that just about does it. But before we go, Wynter, tell the people on here where they can find you, what you're doing, and about your show.
My show is called Waiting to Exhale. We talk about how Generation X shaped us and what it looks like from the other end of it.
Oh, no. My
co-host Karen Thompson and I do this show every week. This week, as of this taping, we interviewed June Diane Raphael from Grace and Frankie to talk about how she talked to us literally about how she thinks Clueless was the worst thing to happen to young women in the late 90s. So that was a ride. I will say that I hang out the most on Twitter. That's my favorite place. So I'm at WYNTER Mitchell with 2 L's. Wynter Mitchell.
Do it. I can't recommend it enough. You're great on Twitter. And I love your show, and I can't wait to hear more of it.
I can't wait for you guys to be on it. So let's figure that out.
Yes, please.
Yes. Hell yes.
Yes.
What an honor that would be.
Yeah, absolutely.
Gina, where can people find you on these here internets?
I write about movies and television at thespool.net, and I too spend too much time on Twitter under Porcelain72.
Do it today, people. Check it out. We're on Twitter at KillByKillPod. We got the Facebook group and stuff where we go into more detail and have funny memes. And then, of course, we're on Instagram for some reason. We are not on Snapchat. Still not on Snapchat. I don't know what to do with it. I don't even know if it's still operating, to be fucking honest. We got a TikTok. I just watch. That just about does it for this week. Of course, next week we'll be back with more Dish by Dish, where we're talking about the next episode of Hannibal. And then we'll be back for the Omen 3. And that's about it.
God bless that poor soul.
They really have it coming. But I can't thank you enough, Wynter, for suffering with us.
Thank you, guys.
Your presence made this all worth it.
Thank you.
And so the body count will continue for myself, for Gina, and for Wynter. Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye.
All right, I have just discovered something. This is at 12:48, and that is that my computer is not plugged in. I now need to go out into the main house and get my computer plug and plug it in. Otherwise, everything
I just
will
plugged
fail.
mine in.
Oh, good. I will be. Give me 1 minute, and this will be taken care of. My apologies.
Okay, no problem.
Okay.
So funny. Gina, like, I was cracking up because I just knew the hurtling towards this city in Israel, and then I was like, this is absolutely Israel. I just know it. I can tell by all the frantic, not going really anywhere, but just moving in a direction.
And normally those folks aren't even like looking to kill the Antichrist or anything. They just got to meet a friend for coffee.
Exactly. Exactly. My favorite story. Get out of my way. No, my favorite story. I'm usually really great about being a good American in other countries, but I have an amazing picture of this elderly man pushing like a bunch of bread, and I go and I try to get in front of him to get my shot, and he's like, no, just get away. He was like, I gotta get this bread. It was fresh bread. It smelled so good, and I was like, this is such a moment. This is such a moment for me. And he was like, get out. And I was like, I'm gonna get out of your way. I'm so sorry.
It's like, I gotta get this bread to the sandwich shop, and you're in my way.
Exactly, and you're in my way. I felt so bad. I was so embarrassed.